So, the message that I want to explore with you today is how we find deep meaning in this celebration of the winter solstice. This day that is the shortest day of the year, the longest night. It's the time when the sun is the earth is axis is tilted farthest from the sun, and tomorrow the days begin to grow longer. And I am looking forward to more light. Anybody? It almost seemed dark when I got up this morning. As the comedian Steve Martin said, a day without sunshine is like, night. Going back to ancient times, people celebrated this day. They celebrated the winter solstice. And this being the darkest day of the year, they also celebrated the darkness. They celebrated the darkness and really found that darkness has its place in life. And so, sometimes the word darkness is used to describe unconsciousness or evil, but in the way that I'm speaking of it, like when we say the prayer, lead us from darkness to light, right? But in the case of today, what I'm speaking of is a sacred darkness. And we can think of this kind of darkness as a time for resting, a time for waiting, a time for germinating, right? And feeling that something is imminent, rebirth. Some kind of rebirth is imminent, some new chapter, some new year, some new expression, right? Think of the darkness in the womb, where the baby's in the womb, it's dark, but it's wonderful. And there's just oneness with the mother, right? The oneness with the mother. I think of acorns. I like to imagine seeds in the ground and how they feel. And I just think of, the oak seed, the acorn in the ground, and it's way down in the ground's frozen, and it's cold, and it's dark, but it's receiving the nutrients it needs. And in time, in the right time, there will be a bit of sunlight. There'll be a bit of warmth that beckons it forward, beckons it. There's a poem by Wendell Berry that invites us to be friendly with the dark. And you may have heard it, but he wrote, "To go in the dark with the light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight. And find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings." Makes me think of a caterpillar and a chrysalis, right? It's this place of stillness. It's the place of the great unknown. It probably can't imagine what it's going to become, right? But it's waiting and it's willing to be still and do that inner work of transformation, right? And many mystics over centuries have talked about the dark night of the soul, right? And the usefulness of that, the dark night of the soul. For me as a minister, I have faced dark nights of the soul over the years, and I've held witness for some of you. Going through the dark night, a dark night. We have those moments when something happens, right, and it shakes our faith, or, someone we trusted lets us down, or, our health takes a turn for the worse. Something happens and we feel, we can't feel our connection to spirit. It's a subtle thing to feel it. Sometimes we don't feel it. It reminds me of that, did you see that movie, The Two Popes? Anybody see that? Yeah, it's such a good movie. And there was a scene where it's Pope Benedict talking to Francis, he's a cardinal at the time. And I want to get the words right. And they're having this really intimate conversation. And Pope Benedict says to Francis, the hardest thing is to listen for God's voice. And Francis says, really? Even for a pope? And Benedict answers, as a young man, I always knew what God wanted. I heard that voice. I felt that. But now I don't know. Maybe I need to listen more intently. And Francis thinks about this and he says, well, perhaps we need spiritual hearing aids. I love that. I need a spiritual hearing aid, right? And Francis said that, he was sharing with Benedict, when I first heard God's voice, it brought me such peace. It brought me such peace, that initial awakening and call and kind of the ecstasy of that first spiritual opening. And so Francis shares that with Benedict, says, well, haven't you felt that, too? And Benedict answers, I can't hear his voice, just silence. And it's so incredibly honest, really, and vulnerable and intimate. And, Benedict was thinking he should quit. You can't quit. You have to die. That's the only way to get out of that job. But, he couldn't feel his connection with God, and he was thinking, how can I inspire others when I'm like in a spiritual desert? Like, I'm not feeling it. I can relate to that. I mean, I have moments, I am so human and I'm so in my humanness, and I'm like, how can I really be a minister? I mean, I'm going through everything you're going through. I'm as human as anyone. So I had recently, somebody said to me that this is where they were. They were really in a dark night, and they actually wrote to me and they said, could you give me some of your hope? Could you give me some of your faith? And I could feel their need. And I thought about that. I meditated on that. It really moved me, and I really wanted to meet that person, help them. But I realized I couldn't give them my faith. I couldn't give them my hope. They had to find it in themselves. But what I could do, it made me reflect on how I myself, what I do when I feel I need a stronger connection. I need to feel that spiritual presence. I need to feel that Shakti more strongly. And I was thinking, I just pray really simply, but I'm really sincere, and I'm intense with my prayer. I was just thinking last night, I actually was praying last night, and I just say, Mother of all that is, help me. It can be that simple, but boy, I mean it. And sometimes tears are flowing, oftentimes, if I'm really needing help, right? And my spiritual teacher, Amma, she says that totally works. And these are her words. She said, take one step towards God. He'll meet you there. No matter how far you feel you've wandered, God's arms remain open. And so that unconditional love, that capacity to rest in that blissful stillness and peace is available, but it does require a receptivity. It requires an openness, a stillness, and a sincere need. I would say a really sincere need, and a bit of humility, because if the egoic mind thinks it needs no help or support, that blocks the grace, I would say. That just kind of blocks the grace. So what I find when the grace comes is it helps me let go. It seems like most of the time, a lot of the reasons we suffer are attachment. Would you say? Anybody notice that? Right? We say that Buddhist prayer. How does that Buddhist prayer go? Free of fear and attachment, know the sweet joy of the way. That's really a deep teaching. And so free of attachment, for me, it's about surrender and letting go. And that's really letting go of attachment. If I'm attached to my health or to my possessions or someone treating me with understanding, I just want to be free. I just want to let that go and just be at peace. I've told you, many of you, about losing my home in the Paradise Fire with a whole lot of other people. And I went through a dark night during that time, for sure. And I was homeless, and I was staying with a friend 3 hours from my job, driving every weekend to serve a congregation while I'd lost everything and I was homeless. And it really was intense, and it made me go so deep. But I do think because I did go so deep, I am pretty free of attachments to stuff, to things. What a blessing. What a blessing. I'm not attached to stuff very much. Our health challenges, that's another place we can get attached. But our process of asking for help with that, right? And becoming free of that attachment even. That helps us go into this whole considering mortality and meeting it, facing it, and touching that which is immortal of our being, that's our true self. And then we can live here, we can enjoy life while we're here, and we can enjoy that change of address. We can welcome it with no problem, right? We can get to that. You watch this, the enlightened masters, the saints, they live like that. They have no fear whatsoever of death. So, So I want to speak on the earth-based traditions today that honor the darkness, and that they honor the dark night of the soul, and they honor that time in the chrysalis, and the effort that it takes to grow, that it takes to bust out, that it takes to transform. In the Native American Lakota tradition, they honor the four directions. Nancy Bloom likes to talk about that. There she is. And she's speaking next Sunday. I'm excited about that. So in the four directions, the north represents winter. And that brings harsh, cleansing winds, cold and hardship that builds resilience. Patience and endurance. It's a time for turning inward to prepare for renewal. And winter is that season for going inward. The leaves all fall, the ground freezes. The animals have so much to teach us, right? The creatures, the bears, the chipmunks, the turtles, the frogs. I've been looking around the pond up at the Upper Lithia Park, and I can't find any turtles. And the frogs, and even the bumblebees, they all hibernate. Even the bumblebees, they all hibernate. And they lower their body temperature, and they lower their heart rate, and they go into a kind of dream-like sleep. And they dream of what's to come, this new season. So that's a lesson. And then there's balance. Balance is another lesson we learn from nature. I marvel at, that there's this perfect balance between the sun and the earth, right? There's this perfect balance. We sing, who lights the stars, who shines the sun. We could also add, who placed it so perfectly that life can exist for us in a way we can thrive here. Just a little bit closer and we would burn, right? Just a little bit further away and we would freeze. So, being that we couldn't live a day without our beloved sun and our beloved earth, winter solstice is a celebration. It's a celebration, and it's this reverent thanksgiving and recognition of the connectedness between ourselves and the earth and all of nature, right? It's an interrelationship. There's a prayer from Stephanie Kaza. We live by the sun, we live by the moon, we move by the stars. We live in all things live in us. We live from the earth, we drink from the rain, we breathe of the air. We live in all things live in us, right? So I love that we're an interfaith center, because we can glean wisdom from a variety of spiritual traditions, and that includes the earth-based traditions. Paganism, present-day paganism is called neo-paganism, and the Native American traditions and Taoism, and also something I've been really loving studying is Japanese Shinto tradition. You're nodding. You're familiar with that. I want to explore that more in the future, that specifically. And I love Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. He's so earth-based. He felt himself in all of nature. He wrote Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, and there's so much in there. But I've been contemplating what's all similar about the earth-based traditions, and part of what is similar is they value and hold that all of nature is inherently divine, interconnected, and sacred. The earth, the trees, the animals, and the elements are sacred. And there's a refreshing lack of dogma in earth-based religions, right? There's just a simple ethic, do no harm, basically. And there's a belief in rebirth, reincarnation, and that divinity is within humans and accessible through spiritual practices. Now, I do have mixed feelings about the term paganism. because the early Christian movement used it kind of in a derogatory way for all that wasn't in alignment with the monotheism of their version of Christianity and of Jesus being the only path to God and to know spirit. And I don't really believe that Jesus ever said or thought that he was the only way to God. And that's a talk for another day. But what I would say is that there's a lot of writings that feel he studied with the Essenes. And if you study the teachings of the Essenes, they revere the elements, right? The wind, oxygen, the water, the sun, the light. They revere those elements as if they are sacred, holy angels, right? So yeah, I'd love to. I'll share more on that another time. But I've been contemplating the idea. Neo-paganism is basically for. It's a term now for present-day reviving of a diverse range of pre-Christian traditions that were polytheistic. So I've been contemplating this week the seeming disparity between polytheism and monotheism, right? And having a view of the divine that's polytheistic or monotheistic. And it's fascinating to me, polytheism has been around way, 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 way longer. It's much more ancient. The worshiping and honoring of God, goddess in many forms. It goes way back. And one of the beliefs in the polytheistic tradition is the belief in animism. Have you heard the term animism? So animism holds that certain places and objects and creatures possess a distinct spiritual essence. And this is a fundamental belief in Native American teachings, right? The spirit resides in people, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, even natural phenomena, the wind, right? The hurricanes, the tornadoes. And quantum physicists are saying in their own way this same thing. Like Ervin Laszlo, a systems scientist that's good friends with Gene Houston. I recommend watching the interview. There's a number of interviews with you two together that are just wonderful. But Ervin Laszlo, he says, the universe is self-actualizing and self-organizing. Everything within it shares in this fundamental universal consciousness from a pebble to a person. From a pebble to a person. So if you've had a spiritual awakening experience, you've probably felt this sense of inseparable oneness with everything, like that everything is part of you and vibrating with consciousness. And if you feel this even for a moment, it just fills you with respect and gratitude and reverence for everything in the living world. When I walk in Lithia Park, I feel, I learned well from Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, when you walk, imagine you're planting lotuses on the earth, right? And you look behind you, there's all these flowers blooming. Or you can use the mantra, I have arrived, I am home. That's another beautiful practice. What I do is I just receive from the earth. I just go out there and I just feel the earth as a being is blessing me. And I just receive from the earth, and I stand on the bridge and I breathe that incredible water, air full of water, full of negative ions, and it gives me life and it restores me, and anything that's heavy on my heart, it just takes from me. It just heals me, right? You've been spending a lot of time there, I've noticed. I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you're all spending time in nature, and that you can sense that everything has spirit. There's an Oroki prayer. Give thanks first to our mother, the earth which sustains us, then to the rivers and streams, to the bushes and trees, to the elements, and finally to the Great Spirit that directs all things. You can feel in the native tradition the intimate relationship that they have with the entire earth community. So I really feel this time on our planet, the sickness of our time is feeling separation. It's feeling separation from the earth. It's feeling separation from each other, and it's feeling separation from source. And when we feel separate, we we don't act well, and we suffer. I feel like you could not go out and clear cut a forest. When I lived at Brighton Bush, I lived there for a number of years, and they were clear cutting. I was living in this old growth, 1,000-year-old trees, and they were clear cutting all around there, just mowing it down. And I felt, if you felt a sense of interconnected oneness with those owls, those nests of owls, those nests of eagles, those nests of chipmunks, those nests of towhees, you could not mow down that forest. Laszlo wrote, "A conscious species can make a fateful mistake, the mistake of separateness. In the modern world, this flawed conception is underscored by the belief that only the human being is a truly conscious being. Other species have either a much lesser consciousness or no consciousness at all." He says, acting on that belief gives rise to behavior that damages the integrity of the web of life. The web of life. Chief Seattle talked about that. But he says we can also rectify that mistake and recover our fundamental unity. So I share these reflections because, this polytheistic idea of anima, that spirit is in everything, I feel has so much to teach us. Living at the foot of Mount Shasta for 32 years, I really felt the holiness, the energy of that mountain. Anybody else feel that? Anybody go to Mount Shasta? Yeah, you post pictures of it. It's like living there. It's like another one of my spiritual teachers. And there's a really neat story when Alma first came to Mount Shasta. I think it was '88. They were driving in a car up I-5, and she was sleeping, resting in the back seat. And they came around the corner in Dunsmuir. And I toured for so many years, I would come around that corner and I would just cry. I'd see the mountain. You get that big blast of that energy, and I would cry. Well, Amma woke up right then, and she sat up and she looked at that mountain and she started chanting Shiva, 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 and she kind of just went into this samadhi. And when she came out, she told them, this is an incredibly sacred place on the planet. This is a holy place for thousands and thousands of years where many people have come to awaken and achieve enlightenment. And I thought, well, that's good. I'm glad I live here, There's a rock at Lake Siskiyou in Mount Shasta. It's on the cover of one of my CDs. I go to my rock. I think I've taken you there. I've probably taken a few people there. But I go there, I used to go between tours, and I would just sit there and I would let go of Kathy Zavada, right? This person, this role I play. And I would just open, and I would just melt into, all my tension would melt into that hot rock. Of course, it was summer, I was usually swimming. But I would just merge with everything, and I wrote a song on that rock called One With It All. We've done it a few times. I love that song. But the words are, on the breeze and the trees, there am I swaying. I am as free as the wind. On the wings of a dove, I am flying high above. Nothing can keep me earthbound. In the light on the water, there am I shining. One moment here, then I'm gone. In the thunder in the distance, there am I shouting. I am the life that lives on and on. There is a freedom. There is a call. There's a feeling you're one with it all. It's better song. It's better song. But I was reflecting on that, and I was thinking, I feel like right there in that song, there's almost this reconciliation of polytheism and monotheism, because it's like there's a sense that everything has sacred vibration, everything has living essence. It's all a unique expression of beauty in diversity, and yet everything is connected in one great body of being. It's kind of like our human body, right? All the cells, well, they seem separate, but they're all in one body, right? I think that's a good analogy. So to say there's only one, that is the ultimate reality, but one is expressed in myriad form. And all that form is not separate from God, goddess, right? So the one God became the many and is the many. So monotheism is polytheism. Does that make sense? Oh, I worked so hard to try to express what I was feeling about this concept. I Googled yesterday Polytheism and monotheism are not mutually exclusive. To see if anybody else was thinking this way and on this track, and I learned something new. Maybe you already know the term henotheism. Henotheism? Henotheism, it means viewing deities as manifestations of a single ultimate reality, like Brahman in Hinduism. That's probably why I love Hinduism. There's another term, monism or soft polytheism, light polytheism. It's defined as the idea that all gods are different aspects or manifestations of the one ultimate singular divine being or reality. So I just share this with you because I've been reflecting on this and I find it exciting, and I feel like it's kind of like when we learn, we keep opening our mind to new ideas or new revelation. It's like we take a crystal and we just hold it up and we just turn it and we see a new color and we see a new facet and we have another piece of the puzzle, another piece of understanding. There's a beautiful Navajo chant. The mountains, I become part of it. The herbs, the fir tree, I become part of it. The morning mist, the clouds, the gathering waters, I become part of it. So, my friends, let's just keep opening our minds to new ideas and also let's on this sacred day, let's open to greater light, but also welcome the darkness. Welcome resting for some time in the unknown, and deeply trust that we are growing, that we are supported, that we are loved, that we are evolved expressions of the great one life. Happy solstice. Thank you all.